What is happening, everybody? Welcome in. It is a beautiful December 8th, at least if you're in the States. It is a little bit late tonight, but hopefully we're not interrupting you from, say, watching Twitch Presents a Yu-Gi-Oh! Marathon, a Digimon marathon, maybe interrupting you from some PUBG, Hearthstone games. Who knows? Whatever you're doing, maybe even out of out of life stuff that you've taken time out of to be here today. So I'm She Said Logic. As always, I want to welcome you guys into the quad. Today we have a really cool kind of college esports edition for the industry, where I have a couple really awesome guests. To my right, you might be familiar with him if you know Twitch student. It is Kevin, aka is it Kibunbun, right? Like
Yeah,
there
just
we
keep
go.
on.
I've always wondered,
Yeah.
and I've never asked, and so I was wondering if I take the risk of pronouncing that just now and then. How is it going? How are things at Twitch student? Kind of for those that might not actually be familiar with you, I doubt that's a thing, but just in case somebody might not be familiar with you, go
Sure.
over, let people know what you do and what you're about.
Yeah, so Twitch Student, we launched it kind of privately 2 years ago in 2016, early 2016. Launched it publicly in April because we believe that students are the future of the gaming esports industries. And I think that we need to really start, teaching students and providing tools, knowledge, and support to help them understand that they can actually work in this industry. We need engineers, we need player managers, we need players who can compete at the highest level, like the students at UBC here. And we need all of that to come together to really kind of set this industry forward. And that's kind of what we believe here at Twitch. So I'm happy to be here. So thanks for having me.
Down below me, if you're from UBC, you probably know this guy, or if you've been on our CS:GO streams, you actually might know this guy. He is not only a president of UBC, he is a pretty consistent top fragger, I would say. Actually, in the four matches that you've been in, I'm pretty sure you've top, or at least tied top frag. Just to clarify for any teammates that might have a little envy or jealousy, we have Tristan joining us. How's it going, man?
Yeah, good actually. Just in the middle of final seasons here. So like you mentioned, just been managing the UBC Esports Club, working on the scholarship as well as playing on the CS:GO team. So just getting some practice in on top of grinding through finals before we break for Christmas, really. Yeah,
It's that
thanks for
beautiful time of year, right? When like the season like it splits at half, and then like you remember that you actually still have like finals and studying, so all that like panic anxiety sets in before you could actually go to holidays and relax a little bit. It's a great time of year. I remember it and I don't miss it at all. It's just like trying to multitask between all of that. But why we're here today is we're obviously going to be talking a little bit about the collegiate industry. As with any collegiate industry, I also added to our bottom right diagonal, there's a little square showing a filled up esports stadium, just to show the prosperity that everybody shows what esports is. You always have to show that filled up stadium of fans watching esports to get the point across. But generally right now, guys, Kevin, especially somebody like you that travels around pretty much now the world for collegiate esports, what are your general thoughts, or what's your stance on where collegiate esports is right now?
I think it's really exciting. If you look at where we've been, and since I think 2014 is when we had the first collegiate esports program, Robert Morris University.
Hmm.
Now we're over around 60 different colleges that have a varsity gaming program or has at least announced one in here in North America. We see now globally that different schools are starting to get curious around esports, not necessarily like on the high competitive play side, but gaming and esports together. I say gaming because they're thinking about different ways to really integrate gaming and esports on their campus, whether it's through live streaming, whether it's through coaching, or whether it's even like just having industry people come in and just give the and share their story. So we're starting to see kind of like the introduction of like courses and curriculums in these classes, and I think it's really cool to kind of, if you asked a couple years ago, no one will believe it. So it's really a dream come true for I guess all gamers everywhere.
Do you see like programs and the aspirations of these schools mimicking say like sports, where they have obviously the oversight of like athletic directors or president. Then you have administrators, coaches, all sorts of staff and faculty and different positions involved, and then the actual, obviously, the players themselves who have kind of been there and are already there. Now is it now like the fiber is kind of getting behind it, right? Like all the all the intricacies like of a program are kind of getting in place, right?
Yeah, to echo on that, yes. I still think we're obviously at the still at the beginning phases of it. I think it's nice to have all these things, but we really want to make sure that we take our time. I think this industry has really accelerated over the last couple of years, so I mean, this is such a new industry that we have the courtesy of time here to really just like think about how we can best serve students, and what kind of elements that we want to devote our time to when creating these programs and curriculums. And in the future, I think you will have programs that look similar to what you see as a sports program. But I think the exciting part is, the research, the classes element to it rather than just playing. I think I would say it's even more exciting because of how inclusive it is if you think about it, and the potential of where it's going.
Gotcha. What about you, Tristan? What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think that, like Kevin mentioned, so over the past few years, there's been a lot of development in terms of the competitive side. So like you have varsity programs coming out, you have teams that are really starting to build not only like the team, but also the support staff around it. So that means coaches, analysts, all that stuff. And then you have sort of other esports orgs where they're not necessarily trying to be the best team, but instead they're trying to go for something like they're going to organize like the next big collegiate tournament, or sort of like a large local event. So that's really interesting to see in terms of like esports is about the competition of the players, but it's also about sort of bringing people together into a community and all that. It's really interesting to see, like, we have a lot of people who sort of want to become casters and like sort of analysts, and that manager role really starting to pop up. And I think all this is starting to come together into much more of like a more balanced ecosystem in like comparison to other traditional sports as well. And I think that's probably the biggest development there. I think the second biggest thing this year specifically is like a lot of the esports clubs as well, because like we've seen the large growth in the past few years. A lot of the sort of senior people are starting to graduate and stuff, and so like it's like the new generation of sort of collegiate esports people coming in, and it's really interesting to see what they're going to do.
And even I think to that point as well, some of the senior graduating members are almost kind of recycling themselves back into the systems, are now becoming either coaches or analysts. Obviously, Mahone being kind of one of them, specifically. Yeah. When we talk about UBC, has shown a great opportunity for teams to have former players that have that experiences with the university. And again, with esports, for gamers that don't particularly like follow sports, a lot of times when you see these sports teams bring in coaches or ADs or bring in some sort of staff, a lot of times what they're looking at for candidates aren't always the top guys. Sometimes they're looking for guys that have actually been alumni, that have actually played or attended or been somehow familiar with the program and have that passion to build up the collegiate program kind of from the inside, rather than sometimes bringing in kind of an outsider to it. Obviously, from my thoughts, ever since I got involved in the collegiate side of casting, like in 2012, yeah, it was just like StarCraft and like League, and then now it's everything: Dota, CS:GO. It's now we have Vainglory. Obviously, shout outs to Cal State Long Beach for just winning their Vainglory Fall Champion. So now it's enormous just to see what it is the case. And it's actually interesting you mentioned about kind of the different staff positions, Kevin and Tristan, in terms of analysts and management and stuff like that. When I was talking earlier this year with a couple of guys, and they were asking me, like, what is missing in collegiate esports? Me being on the production side and having to communicate with teams right now, like management is missing, like team manager or somebody like the coordinator, like good leadership, good organizational value is very important, I think, for teams right now, to stay organized, to stay scheduled, to be able to participate and play when they need to deal with team issues, because that's still a real thing. Egos and players, and sometimes things can get a little bit heated, and because of that, teams just easily dissolve, and that could easily be avoided with a person, I guess, in position that can sort of oversee those type of issues. So yeah, I think you guys kind of bring up a good point in that regards. But looking at the overall scope of like collegiate esports, like because it's not just North American. Some people that might play in NA might just think of us being just NA, and that's the thing in NA. It's actually not. It's a world-renowned thing now. Between all the international tournaments that are going on, some of the cross-international tournaments that have happened, like over the summer that I've watched. There's think of any country, and pretty much there's almost a collegiate sort of program or system there in some way, shape, or form, for depending what game it could be. So what region would you say, at least, especially this might be a little more specific to Kevin, what region do you see as leading, and which kind of regions are improving, which regions are growing, since you kind of have your finger a little bit more on that pulse and had a chance to even in person see some of these places? Well, fill us in.
Yeah, definitely think North America, with all the programs that are coming out, I think that's definitely leading in structure. But I think what I mean by structure mean like when administrators and faculty, these varsity programs are announcing, like University of Utah, UCI, Robert Morris, and the list goes on and on now, which is exciting. I think that crave and that when students from different schools around the world are seeing that, it really hypes them up to really organize and do the same thing. So when I was in Brazil, a lot of the students were asking me about how could they do the same thing, or like they talk about it was like collegiate like 3-4 years ago here, same thing in Brazil. These clubs are really great. Hundreds of students come out to these events. When I was at the Brazilian finals, it was like packed full, like hundreds of students were there from all ages and then their parents came too. Some traveled and drove, like I think one drove like 20 hours to get there from all the way from South Brazil.
Wow.
With their entire team. So you see that kind of energy, and it's just a matter of time. And we had a couple of professors actually come out too and really support the students that were representing the finals. And even I would even say, like, the crowd is way more hyped too sometimes, because Brazil, they cheer for any cool thing that happens. I think that's really cool. I think one team was called the Storm, and their entire student body that came all brought umbrellas, and they just had it up, and they were just standing and cheering with their umbrellas up, and I think that's really cool. In Europe, we see, I would say they're in the similar position as like Brazil, with a bunch of student programs coming up, all looking for the same thing, is like, how do we get this on campus? Because we have some schools now in England that have these programs, and then, again, it's just a matter of time. You got to play the long game. I'm really excited to see what 2018 looks like for collegiate esports. I think there has been enough momentum in this industry to really kind of like set the tone for 2018, enough to get professors, administrators, and faculty advisor, whoever that's has the power to make something happen. There's really no excuse for them to make to make a program now. I think there's too much attention to it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, when you speak over Europe as well, for those that are unfamiliar with England and the UK, they have a league called Newell, if I'm not mistaken, NUEL.
Yeah, the Newell.
The Newell, and so they run kind of the UK. But then when you drop down into the rest of Europe, there's University Esports Masters, which actually, in a sense, brings in, I want to say, several countries across Europe, come to mind, like Portugal, Spain, Italy,
Yeah.
right? So it's a very interesting collaboration, and sort of more like how we have it here in North America, where we just kind of bottle up the U.S., Canada. Obviously, at some point in time, I think there's also that discussion of, I think right now there's not enough presence in regards to Mexican universities down south, in which I think eventually they'll become somehow a part of kind of the whole esports picture for North America as well, because indeed I think they're growing as well. Interesting enough, there's obviously leagues over in China that are very popular, especially for games like League of Legends. There's also, I think, if I'm not mistaken, areas like Singapore, Japan. So it's all over the place. Like there's a lot of leagues and opportunity. But would you say that like North America is probably the like kind of the leader right now in regards to infrastructure, league operations, to programs, to schools, to even competitive level too as well?
Everything except competitive level. I think we lost to South Korea. Wait, which team won? No, we lost to China.
China.
China. Yeah.
It was
In League of Legends the Tencent Championships where they invited all the regions together.
I can't
Yeah.
remember what was that school. It
was
was
we
like
lost
this.
we lost to Hong Kong, I think. So
Hong Kong.
um,
There's like
yeah.
another one too there as well. I can't remember what was it. The school of something and something. It was really funny. It was like voice acting in anime or something like that.
Yeah, that was a Japan school. That was anime and voice acting school of anime or something. Tokyo School of Anime or something.
Yeah, it's always cute. We were just like, because obviously for us, we're like, we have like UBC or Colorado or whatever. When we see that like school name that's like has that like specialty, a lot of times, it kind of catches, I feel like, North American students off guards, because over in a lot of other countries like Europe, Japan, and other areas, they actually have like specialty universities for something kind of specific. So, but yeah, it was kind of really funny looking back at it. Tristan, have you had a chance to kind of get your feel on any of the international play at all, or any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So interestingly, I'm actually part British, part Chinese. So I'm actually from Hong Kong, and the UK as well. So I've actually been to both places, and looking like the UK, I mean, you guys have covered it in terms of what they've been doing there. But in terms of Hong Kong, actually, I've been talking to a few of my friends there in terms of university and high school, and I do believe that they've come out with a sort of mini tournament structure for high schools in Hong Kong, actually, in terms of the might not be like at the full collegiate level yet, just because Hong Kong's a lot smaller in terms of size. But at the high school level, they've actually come up with a tournament, and the interesting thing is that the Hong Kong government itself has been trying to sort of support the esports landscape there. So I know they've been doing well there in terms of getting teams to like sort of participate and grow there. And most recently, I think it was last summer, that they actually had their first like big esports sort of tournament there, and it's been pretty successful. So that's what I've been seeing in terms of Asia and Hong Kong specifically. Outside of that, I think, yeah, just North America and Canada specifically, I think, has seen a lot of development this year, which is really good to see. And yeah, I'm just excited for 2018.
Cool. Well, just because we are not exactly have all the time in the world, and I kind of keeping you guys late, we'll move on to the next topic, which is scholarships and compensations for students. Right now, obviously, there's officially right around, what do you say, 50 clubs, or I guess 50 programs that are scholarship technically, right? Somewhere in that ballpark right there. Yeah. Recently, of course, a university like Harrisburg, right below me, that could speak to it even better, would be UBC's and Mr. Tristan, the president. So how is it now? I guess go over kind of the announcement, the process of what it took to get to UBC being a supported scholarship program for esports.
Yeah, okay, so I think going back, just to give everyone like a brief idea, so we've actually been trying to pitch for a scholarship program for a few years now. Obviously, I think it really started to have like a really high demand or push for it ever since we won ULAL a few years ago, and like winning it 2 times in a row has definitely been like a huge factor in terms of wanting us to push for it. But for me specifically, it actually began last summer around May, when I went to Biz Esports, and where I actually got to talk to Kevin, as well as the guys from RMU. So that's Kurt as well as Mike. And so just talking to them and really like figuring out what I could do to persuade like the university specifically. Because I mean, like, I've had experiences working with sponsors, working with like to other local communities as well. And I think that, I can have a pretty good shot at it. So I spent the summer sort of talking to Kev, talking to the guys from RNU, researching a bit more, maybe like talking to the guys from UCI as well, and sort of just built like a full-on sort of like research that I sort of then found an opportunity to talk to our university president. And so the thing is, our university president actually just swapped over last year, and so he's a new president, and compared to the old one, he's actually a lot more open to it. And so I was able to sort of get him for a meeting over during like summer, and we just sat down for about, I think it was like 30 to 45 minutes, and I basically ran him through the entire sort of proposal, as well as like why it's really important for UBC and just like North America in general to have this. And he was sort of he was really interested and thought it was a great idea, and that's sort of the first step that we had. And then after that, I've had to sort of talk with the university and figure out what specifically we can do for scholarships, and sort of what direction we can take in terms of, are we going to do this as like a competitor only thing? Are we going to do this as like a community thing? And so after that, we sort of get to where we are now in terms of like, we've recently announced it in December, and we're going to hopefully have everything ironed out by late February so that we can have it ready for the upcoming academic year.
Well, what was the pitch? We bring you titles, like.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like, if you want us to stay #1 in North America, I mean, I think it's pretty important, you know.
I mean, you guys can definitely, I feel like, keep that, keep a lot of titles in your hands, especially now with potential support. In terms of the type of like scholarships and compensation that these students would be getting, is there, are you able to talk on it in regards to what the type of scholarship it would be?
Yeah, so I can't go into too much detail just yet, but to give you guys a basic overview, so the university has announced 2 scholarships specifically. One that is geared towards as like an entrance award to sort of people who have achieved like sort of a good standing in previous years, so sort of like a scouting mechanism, I guess, to sort of recruit these players to universities, saying, hey, this is like a scholarship here, and like if you play for us, this is something that we can offer. And the second one is more at looking at sort of a service award type of thing to give to like current esports club members, whether it be like people from within the community, whether they're like an outstanding manager or coach, like, so not specific for the players as well, but so it's trying to encourage like more in the community and like ecosystem side, I guess.
Gotcha. Kevin, in terms of like seeing, obviously North America, if they're not a private university, for the most part, I think they're still finding, a lot of hurdles of how they could figure out to get involved in regards to the compensation and an opportunity for scholarships. What type of like compensations are you seeing right now, at least in terms of the system that a lot of these teams are picking up that might not be under the private system?
Uh, hmm. A lot of them are I can't talk about. Um, so I mean, it's scholarship can operate in a couple ways. It's tuition for the year to per quarter basis, by performance basis. Right now they're taking different models from different school now, and mirroring off what works best for them. Every time a school approaches us, we either let them talk to we should either introduce them to like Mark Deppy, like how Tristan did, or Kurt. These guys have been through the trenches that they've actually put programs together. I have not put like a scholarship program together, so Kurt and Mark are they've spent years working on it, so I pass it up to them when it comes to the funding and
Mhm.
the the whole line by line items of what it takes to build like a facility and like the compensation side.
Gotcha.
Right now, I've seen a mix of everything, mostly because private universities and public universities, they're both different in how they work. Um, right now, public universities are kind of taking it slow, and they really expect things to be um, free. If not,
Mhm.
because they can be like, we have this brand name. What can you do? So from private universities, it's a huge recruiting mechanism for them. So they don't mind the spend, because if they get 100 students applying for the school, that's a pretty good ROI on their part, because school, depending on what height, could be anywhere between $12,000 a year to $40,000 a year.
Mhm.
And if 100 new students come into a school that's like only 1,200 in size, it's pretty big. And then if you look at a school like, I'm from University of Washington, we have an undergrad of like 45,000 students. That 100 students applying is not enough for them to go, we don't need to spend all this money to do that, because we're already going to get these 100 students anyway. So like, what else are we doing it for? Oh, well, we're doing it for the novelty side. We're doing it for because our student body needs it, because there's 5,000 students playing video games, or like UBC won twice. So like, why are we not supporting students? That's our job at university, is to make sure that these students have a college experience that they think that their university is supporting them, so that in return they could like commit and donate to the university later, or participate in alumni activities.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little bit of a different tone if you think about it. And so um, compensations is still relatively new. Yeah, I just forward all those to the right people there.
Gotcha. I mean, ideally, I guess then would be asking here's a hypothetical question. Ideally, what kind of a scholarship or what kind of a financial compensation would you love to see students have?
A full ride. No, I mean, like, it really depends. It would be nice if a student playing League or Overwatch, or any of these games that have years and years of collegiate so far, um, could have like a full ride, not full ride, sorry, an annual scholarship, so they can depend on the money and really play at their best, because you can have the whole year to know that you're on the team. Then that's really dope, in my opinion. Um, Full ride, it seems a little bit too much right now, as some of these esports titles hasn't even been around for 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. So I think a year long thing is pretty cool.
I think yeah, no, I think considerably, at least on my side of full ride obviously would be cool, but yeah, with transfers, with programs kind of moving around and shifting in different organizational bodies and different competitions, you never know as well with the students if they don't continue participating or playing. So
Yeah.
almost I guess almost have that like walk on approach where if they look maybe like a benefit for your team, or it would be good to maybe
Right.
support that student for that year or something like that. Eventually, I'm assuming like Tristan. Eventually, the goal is if you could get that consistency, if everything grows and gets big, you would hope that all your teams could get scholarshiped, right? Like all the players and everything, right?
Yeah. So I think, like you said, especially for a bigger university like UBC, for example. So we have a student body of about, I think it's 40,000 now. It's definitely not something we can do to sort of accommodate every single team as of the moment. We got to sort of start slow this year and sort of build it up slowly. Ideally, we'd like to be able to support not only all the players as well, but also either the support staff and maybe even people who are looking to maybe do the production or the casting side, because I think setting up the players is the most important thing currently, but in the future as well. I think really focusing on the other aspects of esports as well. So like such as casting and production is really going to sort of push it all further ahead, I guess.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, it's really interesting because again, we were talking before we went live as well. A lot of these public universities are kind of playing that cat and mouse game with the potential NCAA involvement. They're not sure exactly how feasible it would be, again, running a league, but at the same time they do have money. Most of them have money. A lot of them, when they try to go towards that nonprofit status, that means that whatever money they're making, they're trying to blow and spend it on whatever they can before the end of the year. And so funding these programs in theory shouldn't be that big of an issue for especially the big universities and even some of the medium and smaller size universities, just because of the amount of money that they have. And if you can help out even right now with some of the students, just to an extent, like maybe even stipend them, like to an extent like half of their tuition or something like that, like stuff like that would be a good even head start for some of these programs that don't want to fully commit but want to help and support their programs. Because yeah, they just have money. They have money to blow. I mean, again, it's not a big investment when in terms of esports programs when you're trying to build, unless you're like trying to build a huge like studio. Like I'm not sure what the cost was for the UC Irvine arena that they put out, and I think it was like what 600K or something like that for the North Texas arena that they just built up as well. So there is some. I mean, they have money if they're making these big type of projects and stuff like that. most likely have the money to kind of invest into esports in some way, shape, and form, and the return is usually pretty good for them, especially with how a lot of the media and attention's going this way. So, again, for now, as we're kind of growing and getting bigger, or is everybody kind of content, I guess, with where the scholarships and the compensation is going? Should it be any quicker in terms of getting more programs involved, or is it just kind of sort of taking its natural course at this point?
So I think for esports specifically, and I think this relates to the industry in general, it's just still sort of gauging the ROI and how are you going to measure sort of the feedback. I mean, the return on investment you get from investing in esports and collegiate esports in general. And I think at least for like the time being, it's still going to have to be like small steps moving forward. And at least that's what I think is going to happen.
Kevin, any thoughts?
I think we're way ahead, to be honest, than I ever expected. So
Really?
I'm really excited about that. I think with schools like a school like University of Utah coming in and UC Berkeley announcing something, these are, UC Berkeley was one of the first, was a school that that fought for free speech. It was a school that that's where free speech was founded. And so and I think that's really exciting that schools like these are really taking a step forward. And I think we're way ahead. And even classes and curriculums where students can earn credit while taking esports and gaming classes, I think we're way ahead. I think here we didn't expect this to happen until the next couple of years. So I'm really excited about where this is going. So it's just hard to keep up at this point, to be honest.
I actually like that answer to attitude. Most of the time when I'm asking everybody, it's just like, yeah, why isn't everybody scholarshiped and we have arenas and people aren't traveling to opponents like across the country to play against them? It's like,
yeah.
I mean, for me, obviously, I'd love that, and I would hope, obviously, we're moving even quicker and quicker to that point in time. But yeah, I guess that when you keep perspective, when programs just started popping up a couple of years ago, it will take time to develop, and obviously there's a lot of kind of the collegiate red tape that's involved when it comes to creating and supporting programs. But I think once that barrier is breached or figured out, it'll probably take off very quickly once, especially when we talk about kind of the NCAA bodied schools, like once they figure it out, that's usually that's probably when it's going to really take off and grow heavily and quickly as well. And at that point, that's probably just going to be chaotic at that point. So so
it's already chaotic. So we gotta just enjoy the ride. I think it's been an awesome year for 2017 for collegiate esports. So
yeah,
not complaining.
And in terms of like structures, I guess we kind of talked about it, but what are some of the current structures that you are seeing right now in college programs? Obviously, you're seeing some like that are like half scholarships. You're seeing some that are like full rides for some schools. You're seeing kind of club support, sometimes program support. Some are getting put under different, like liberal arts programs. Like, what kind of how are you seeing some of these programs kind of get around being like athletic? Technically,
yeah. So I think University of Utah is a good example to bring up because they're housed in the also varsity side, but also in the interactive media and entertainment side. So that allows them to do a breadth of things that you wouldn't be able to do if you were like a varsity sport, because varsity sport, they care about winning. Right. But with an interactive media program, you're allowed to include education, which is like what I go back to on and on again, because I think that's really exciting to start teaching classes. And some of the classes that I'm thinking about in the future, it's like, having guest speakers from like teams like Counter Logic Gaming, which is what we did, where we took them out to Southwest Baptist University to give them we had Darshan out there, we had Devin Nash, who's the CEO, kind of give their story and their spiel about how they got to where they are, just to kind of shed that light of like road mapping what esports careers look like, what it means to be one of the top laners in the world. I think that's really powerful that that we're starting to see more of today. More and more schools are hungry for this. More and more students want this. We're starting to see streaming classes now where some of the goals are you have to make it as an affiliate by the end of the quarter or the semester. So that's really dope. Which should be pretty easy because if you have a 30-room classroom size, I think we can fulfill the 50 follower requirement pretty easily.
Yeah.
So things like that are coming out where you're earning class credit to take introductory level courses, and with that, that's why I think it's exciting to house it outside of varsity esports or include varsity esports, but also include a different department. Another school like University of Miami out of Ohio, they're housed in the media section as well. I think that's and they're doing classes. We had history teacher teach a class, history teacher who was one of the general managers, which he was the general manager of Phoenix One, and head coach of what's it called, Team 8. He was a partner streamer a couple years ago before he went to full-time esports. He was able to teach a class at University of Miami, Ohio, and this is kind of the stuff that we need to really add that structure to give more guidance, because I think all this fancy equipment is great, but it has to do with people, and it has to do with people sharing stories, so people can better understand. That's kind of how we learn, right? It's not through like the fancy keyboards that students get, or like the red switches or whatever. It's about
you don't want just a generation just to die off. So when we need the acceptance sooner than us making our next generation and having them.
Yeah, we gotta. You gotta learn the history.
That's why always a thing everybody talks about. Yeah, just wait until that generation passes, and then we'll be the ones that lead esports. It's like, yeah, I don't know if we want to wait 20, 30 years down the line, like before like everybody can understand and is cool that we have the capability and tools to let people know about this, and have it be more of an acceptable thing.
Right.
There's no reason to not really let it be more of an acceptable thing. Tristan, for you more specifically, because you're under a Canadian university, and under that system, you guys aren't technically held by that grasp of like the NCAA worries. So do you see more Canadian universities popping up programs probably in the next couple of years just to be able to keep pace with yourself and all the other universities that are getting involved now?
Yeah, so I think not being in the NCAA does come with its benefits. So like you said, not being in their grasp, but I think another factor to consider is that in that case, it's a lot smaller to if you just had a Canadian conference itself, which means there'd be a bit less money and a bit less support in that sense. But I think now that like UBC as well as St. Clair themselves have started to build that in Canada, I'm really hoping that other universities, specifically maybe even in Vancouver, so like SFU or BCIT, SFU specifically, who have a really strong record and like always finishing top 4 and like top 2 in previous years for ULaw as well. I think that if they had it as well, they could definitely make the push to becoming like #1. And then in terms of sort of getting that support structure or like scholarship structure in general, I think like Kevin mentioned that it's really important to like some universities, they value like varsity becoming #1, but it's also really important to build on like other universities as well. So some universities might be super heavy on research, for example, like UBC, where they're actually known the most for the research they do, and I believe that UCI, that part of their scholarship or like their esports program does encompass a part looking into sort of research and seeing how like gaming itself can sort of like help people as a way to, I couldn't remember specifically, but basically it looks at like different ways gaming can like sort of help people out as well. I think that's a really interesting approach to not only look at the like athletic side, but also look at the academic side as well. And I think that's a new big area, especially with like a huge push in streaming itself, and like online classrooms and distance education as like being the next big step like forward, I guess.
Awesome. No, I agree with you 100%. Just to not hold us up too much longer on this, the other one that just kind of came into my head, international events. We are not really constrained to just playing in the US or just Canada or just North America. As we've seen over the past year with a lot of these international events, we can have more competition, I feel like, in off seasons and during breaks where teams can get invited and go participate and represent, I feel like, as well, and be ambassadors for different countries. And esports generally does a pretty good job of being kind of low-key, very kind, fun, general people to be around to as well. So do you guys want to see more international events over the next coming years as well, not just growth within the inner countries themselves?
I don't know how, like, yeah, of course.
I mean, I mean,
that's all the fun. Yeah.
Well, because I mean, again,
yeah.
there might be some, like, you know, educational bodies, just like they need to stay in America, they need to worry about their studies, they don't need to be, you know, going across or whatever, you know, the pond.
No, the best way to learn is to hang out with different people from different cultures. In esports has no borders, man. It's really a truly international. It's really an international program, you know. So, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with Kevin, because, like, I mean, if you think about university, like, in general, right? You have exchange programs for a reason. It's so that people are able to travel towards, like, Europe or Asia and sort of understand the culture there. Because I think for myself specifically, since I've, like, traveled a lot, and, like, I'm not Canadian, for example, and I've, like, come to North America, it's really different. And I think that being able to sort of understand that and sort of, like, engage with people around the world definitely helps, like, not only my, like, studies, but just myself as a person as well. And I think, you know, sort of building that connection and that sort of that competition outside of North America should be something that we look to build in the future. Obviously, I don't know how it's going to go, if we'll be able to do, like, oh, we're going to fly out every month to, like, a different country or something. But, you know, maybe, like, once a year at the end would be, like,
yeah, off season, summer, maybe even during, you know, even winter in theory, could be maybe a possibility as well. I would.
Let me add to that. Yeah, let me add to that. When I was in Portugal, I sat down with the German team, and they said the most memorable thing was, you know, really trying out Portuguese food for the first time. It wasn't, you know, the playing in the league or whatever. That was awesome as well, and they did whatever they could to win. But end of the day, they said meeting different students from different parts of the world and seeing that was way more valuable than, you know, winning. And that's kind of like what makes collegiate really cool, is the fact that we can do that, you know. And moving forward, I hope to see more competitions like that. I want to see Australia come into the play now. I want more schools in South America come into the play, and so on and so forth, you know. I want UBC to lose to an international school, you know. I want Hong Kong to go down.
That's the opposite plan I had. That's the opposite plan I had. I'm thinking about it. I'm like, what if we had UBC and a representative? We'll have somebody from Brazil. We'll have somebody from Europe. You know, we'll bring a Danish team, Netherlands. It'll mimic almost like a CS:GO major, but this time we have the advantage. We have the chance. North America can show up and win.
Soon TM.
Yeah, and it could actually take this for sure, because I have the confidence that we have, you know, some of the best teams in the world right now at the current moment, which obviously can change. But while we look great and while we're keeping the lead, why not show it off a little bit? While we can. But no, that's cool. I would hope, you know, as the years go, more international competitions come out where, you know, not just even, you know, like European countries close to each other, or just, you know, South American countries, or just North American countries. More international events where we're bringing in from different regions to play each other, like, across the world. I think that would be very captivating content as well, because I think that's also a thing as we're trying to figure out ways to make collegiate esports more compelling and more interesting, in regards to interest and viewership and storylines. Having international competition would probably be literally the best option, right? Like, just to put you know, center stage each country's, you know, best teams out there.
Right, that's the dream.
All right, guys. I've held you up long enough. I've delayed you long enough all day. I appreciate you guys hanging out. Really quick, getting a few words in before we go. What are your guys' holiday plans? Gotta know. You're already looking festive. Where's the hat, Tristan?
I know.
You're off 1 week. You're off 1 week. We needed you to come on the last week's holiday edition. You would have been perfect.
Yeah. So for myself specifically, after my finals, I'm actually flying back to see my family in Hong Kong for the holidays.
Ooh, that's
So yeah,
awesome.
I'm pretty excited to see them.
Nice.
Apart from that, not much really. Just yeah, spending time in Asia and then coming back for the second term to win CSL. You know, that's the plan.
Gotcha. I like that plan. Are you guys going to be practicing a bit too as well, probably before as much as you can?
Yeah, definitely. We're gonna definitely put in the hours to stay on top.
All right. Where in the world, Carmen San Diego, will Kevin be?
I will be moving down to. I have my girlfriend's sister's wedding, so I'll be down in LA, and then probably moving half my stuff. Uh, and yeah, seeing where that takes me. So,
Twitch student, and in regards to those travels, where can people find you in the next few months? You would think.
yeah, I might be going to London to the Twitch student, a Twitch office, not Twitch student office, but a Twitch office in London, and be working on collegiate in Europe, and then other than that, just either in California, just hanging out and just doing the day-to-day grind.
Sweet.
Not much, keeping it low key.
Once it gets going, is Garvey going to be going anywhere? Is he making any big stops anywhere that people can watch out for Twitch student?
For Garvey, he wants to travel less. I think he racked like 300,000 miles last year. So and he just turned 47, so he's like Kevin instead, and I'm like, sure, man, I don't mind.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's wild. I mean, yeah, no, he's a grinder, but yeah.
yeah.
Obviously, as you mentioned as well, you guys are going to have the website launching as well for Twitch students. So keep an eye out on that, guys, for those that are looking for more support and help with getting your programs going. So Twitch student, big thing. Follow them obviously at Twitch student, or if you're watching on stream here, just go into the info section, scroll down. There's 2 buttons for the Twitch student info tab and the Twitch student, I guess, collegiate community streamers as well, if you guys are interested. So, as for myself, I am going to be shutting down like a bear probably for like 4 weeks until we get the spring, so I could deal with all the coordinators and teams in the spring before I have like a mental breakdown. But we do have one more quad coming up next week on Friday. It is going to be a recap of the season on the fall side of things. So basically, we're going to be nodding our heads that we all predicted that UBC would take their division, that they would take their group. So be sure to tune in for that. That's most likely going to be next Friday at 7 p.m. Pacific. But other than that, if you guys missed anything, you guys can head over to youtube.com/C-Star-League. We will have the VOD up there after this is done. So we want to thank you for coming in, tuning in. Kevin, Tristan, thank you guys for joining. Appreciate it. Everybody, wish you a good night. Get some sleep. Maybe study if you want over the weekend. But other than that, have a good rest of the year.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Daniel.
Thank you.
Bye.